Greetings and welcome back to Room 303 AP English, the Roberts Lectures. We are now in the poetry section and we turn to Garrett Hongo's The Legend. Now, Hongo was born in 1951, Japanese-American poet and an academic as well. He did win the James Laughlin Award and was nominated for the Pulitzer Prize in Poetry. Now, this poem is a tribute poem in memory of J. Kashiwamura. And we will want to pay attention to the way in which this is a tribute poem. Now, it is an elegy, as we'll sometimes refer to. We know about that from our study with Beowulf and our work that we did during our study of Beowulf. You can go back and take a look at those lectures at learnstrong.net. Let's turn now to the reading of the poem. I'm actually going to have us listen to a performance by a young student who is performing this poem for us, found on YouTube. And this one is from the 1988 offering, The Legend. Let's just follow and then we'll enjoy afterwards, all right? Anna Van Dyne is the presenter for this one.
The Legend by Garrett Hongo. In Chicago, it is snowing softly, and a man has just done his wash for the week. He steps into the twilight of early evening carrying a wrinkled shopping bag full of neatly folded clothes, and, for a moment, enjoys the feel of warm laundry and crinkled paper, flannel-like against his gloveless hands. There's a Rembrandt glow on his face, a triangle of orange in the hollow of his cheek as a last flash of sunset blazes the storefronts and lit windows of the street. He is Asian, Thai or Vietnamese, and very skinny, dressed as one of the poor in rumpled suit pants and a plaid mackinaw, dingy and too large. He negotiates the slick of ice on the sidewalk by his car, opens the Fairlane's back door, leans to place the laundry in, and turns for an instant toward the flurry of footsteps and cries of pedestrians as a boy. That's all he was. Backs from the corner package store, shooting a pistol, firing it once at the dumbfounded man who falls forward, grabbing at his chest. A few sounds escape from his mouth, a babbling no one understands as people surround him, bewildered at his speech. The noises he makes are nothing to them. The boy has gone, lost in the light array of foot traffic, dappling the snow with fresh prints. Tonight, I read about Descartes' grand courage to doubt everything except his own miraculous existence, and I feel so distinct from the wounded man lying on the concrete. I'm ashamed. Let the night sky cover him as he dies. Let the weaver girl cross the bridge of heaven and take up his cold hands.
All right, let's turn now to what really is a tragic poem. And yet, I'm going to make the argument that there's something transcendent about the tragedy of this poem as one begins to now speculate together, we can do this, on what exactly really is the point of calling this poem The Legend. We're going to start there because that's so significant. Now obviously, the poem tells a simple story of an inconsequential man who will be the product of a violent crime, not perpetrated intentionally against him, it appears. And yet, in the end, one more person dying, of course, to gun violence. No question, this is always going to be one of the important readings of this poem. But I think there's something else going on here. Because we're going to meet the speaker of the poem who knows his Descartes. an academic, we might say. We could think of Hongo possibly as the speaker of this poem. And that whole notion of cogito ergo sum, the idea, I think, therefore I am, and the value of existence, and then we'll finish with some observations about possibly mythology and the power of myth, legend. Notice we begin in Chicago. The snow is softly falling. Notice all the S sounds. Notice the reference to Rembrandt and the glow on his face. A last flash of sunset blazes the storefronts. You get a sense, knowing how the poem is going to unfold, that something tragic is about to happen. In the second stanza, we learn that the victim of this crime is, of course, an unknown. Asian, Thai or Vietnamese, poor, one of the poor, right, of that class of individuals. When he is shot, it almost seems inconsequential in the rendering of the poem itself, right? Firing it, the dumbfounded man falls forward, grabbing at his chest. But then right away, we have others around who are somehow trying to be there to understand, right? The babbling, the bewilderment equals the speech. That is to say, the impossibility of appreciating really not only what he's saying, but the experience of his life and the way in which his life is now moving away. Notice the compelling line at line 34, 33, 34, 35. The noises he makes, nothing to them. His life is, of course, as well, nothing to them. And then the shift. Tonight, the speaker says, I read about Descartes' grand courage. Notice the ironic tone. Grand courage to doubt everything except his own miraculous existence. And I feel so distinct from the wounded man lying on the concrete. I am ashamed. We could immediately jump to 3a. And of course, Auden's Musée du Beaux Arts, one of the classic texts in 303 that plays with this same game of the pain we know, the pain we appreciate, seems to be almost only the pain that is our pain. Someone else's, not so much. Now, of course, this line, I'm ashamed, is significant. That is to say, there's a lot of different ways to read this line, I am ashamed. One, of course, is I'm ashamed of how little I understand about the human conditions and of course, this quote-unquote miraculous experience of life. Of course, there's another sense of shame as well. The impossibility of really recognizing the loss of another, and of course, that other's important existence. Finally, the poem ends with two lines that repeat the word let. Let the night sky cover him as he dies. Let the weaver girl cross the bridge of heaven and take up his cold hands. Your footnote here will tell you that the weaver girl is an ancient Chinese, also Japanese legend, comparable to Valentine's Day, about the weaver girl, the star of Vega, and her sweetheart, the cowherd, the star Altair, who are separated in the night skies but are united once yearly when they're permitted to cross the Milky Way on a bridge formed by many magpies. This notion of mythology. Notice the genius of this poem. We're joining myths. Descartes' myth, along with the Asian myth, the Chinese-Japanese story of the search for the soul, we might say. Ergo, the legend as being the title of the poem. Now, of course, the 2a major messages here. Life can be, obviously, unexpectedly harsh and tragic. Life is fragile, and regularly we witness, or we're a part of witnessing somehow, the passing of life, and it becomes for us almost inconsequential, tragically so. At 2b, the title, obviously, and the referencing to the mythologies that are a part of this, so profound. At 3a, I've already mentioned Auden's Arts, as well as Thomas Gray's Elegy in a Country Churchyard come to mind. What are the titles that for you play a very similar, profound game of recognizing those who are unrecognized? And somehow the lamentation is a huge part of that. One of the central texts for many years in 303 has been Leslie Marmon Silko's Lullaby, which will play a very similar kind of game. Finally, at 3b, what are your thoughts about I am ashamed, the line, I am ashamed? I mean, do you have a personal reference to that? What was a time in your life when you couldn't help or fix a really bad situation, and for that, you did feel a sense of shame, or pity, we might say. What is it that Aristotle calls it in poetics? Pathos. Well, I hope that this will lead you, and the study will lead you on to more of Hongo's great, great poetry. Beautiful, insightful poem. Thank you.